The scoreboard is the first thing in this video which I'm going to mention that you can look at during a game, at the start of the game, during the game, for various different reasons to identify whether you should change gun or class. So the first thing to look at is going to be the class of the enemy team. Here we have a game of Devastation Conquest where the majority of the enemies, pretty much almost all of them, are playing as Assault. Normally, if I see mostly medics or assault players going for longer range weapons, semi-automatic assault rifles, semi-automatic sniper rifles, bolt-action sniper rifles, or even long-range support weapons which you can sit back and defend a bit with, are going to be ways you can, be advantageous against this set of enemies on this team on the screen right now. However, obviously Devastation is more of a close to medium range map. Long range isn't very possible, or good to do throughout the course of the entire game. Here you can see there's hardly any medics, so changing to the medic class with a high TTK weapon, you probably find yourself doing very, very well because all of those assault players obviously can't, heal up more than once and might be partially damaged as you go into all these gunfights. And therefore you won't face as many high TTK weapons as you will be using in the medic class. The next thing to pay attention to on the next example here on screen is going to be the squads and platoons. Here it's more so heavily stacked with platoons on my side, but again this works both sides and mainly looking at the enemy team. But you can see, when looking at platoons, this tells you all the enemies or teammates who are playing together in squads, therefore going to be bunching up in large numbers running around the map, as well as potentially players that are going to be in parties calling out positions of enemies of yourself as you're looking at this trying to get an advantage. And this can give you an indication as to the type of gameplay style you're going to come up against. Normally the most common thing is going to be a whole squad of ZK players, so the most meta gun in the game, who are going to constantly be reviving each other. In this case, I'm going to want to change to a more medium to long range gun, normally a high magazine capacity weapon, which doesn't have to reload so often, so you can keep your distance to these squads and take them out from a distance, not get overwhelmed and swarmed. If you run out of ammo, then you've got time with distance between you and that squad to reload and then take out the next few. Likewise, if you take out one or two enemies, they're going to want to smoke and go for the revive. If you've got distance between you and that squad, that enemy squad is going to find it very difficult to be able to actually push you and kill you while also trying to go for the revive. You giving that distance between you and the enemy squad is going to stop them from being able to revive because they can't reach you with the ZK. You can see the dead body, which they're going to want to go for a revive, whether it's inside smoke or not. So they've got to make a decision whether they push you or they risk going for a revive, which is all advantageous to you. So look at the platoons, see what guns they're playing as, and this will give you a massive indication as to what class or gun may do well in the game you're about to play. Or even looking at the scoreboard throughout the course of the game as people change classes. The final and smaller tips here is simply going to be, of course, you can look at the general levels of players in the game on your team or on the enemy team. If there's more high-level players, there's a lot of high-level players. Generally, high-level players are going to play aggressive and fast, which therefore means if you play slow and more long range, you can find yourself, give yourself an opportunity of a way to have an advantage against those enemies. And lastly, you can as well, look at the top half of the leaderboard or even the top 5 to 10 enemies and teammates to see what classes and guns they're using, because those are the enemies you're going to want to counter the most. The lower level enemies at the bottom, generally it doesn't matter what class they use, as you practice and get good enough, you can sort of deal with them no matter what they're using. But yeah, look at the top half and look at the levels throughout the entire scoreboard. Next is going to be maps. This is a pretty much self-explanatory one that everybody knows, but it has to be included in the video. Of course, every map is built for different types of play styles. However, most maps generally do offer areas to play, close range, medium and long range. But generally, as you can see on screen, Rotterdam is going to be best for medium to long range. You have got close range areas around E and D, but otherwise it's generally quite open. So that gives you an idea of what gun or class will do best on this map. Looking next at Underground, it is a very linear map with hardly any width. It has long lines of sight, all the way down the map if you were using a sniper, but there's so much bombs, smokes going off, you can hardly see anything at any time. So of course this is mainly best for close range aggressive weapons. And it's worth adding to Underground what is very unique about this map, of course, because it's so tight and close quarters, you end up with many different choke points at either side of the map. So C flag, as you can see, is quite open and might be best suited if you want to play long range. The center and middle of the map, of course, is going to be the most, narrow and close range area. And on the left, in the British spawn by A, then of course you're going to have, you've got your main big road through the center of the map. You've got buildings which people are standing on either side, therefore medium range in this area, possibly as well close range, would be best suited if you want to change gun and ranges throughout the course of playing Underground. And lastly, if we just look at Devastation, then of course, there are buildings which you can go in and around, but there are long roadways, which again are not too long or good enough for sniping because there's different levels of elevation, but generally Devastation suits medium range weapons. So definitely I would advise whenever you're about to deploy into any map, have a look at the spawn screen, have a look at the map, and just give yourself an idea in your head of what gun, what range this map is built for, and therefore what would do well. Next we have game modes, and firstly here looking at Breakthrough, it's a very linear game mode where enemies are attacking and pushing in one direction and the other team is defending and holding the enemies coming from that direction. You very rarely need to worry about enemies coming from your sides or your back. There are options to flank, but generally the enemies are coming from one direction. You can see in the sectors, the start of the sector here on Twisted Steel, as an example, there are very clearly defined and limited boundaries. Often you can't push forward as a defending team to try and reach and get aggressively up close to the enemies, in which case, you're pretty much screwed when enemy snipers want to sit all the way back at the back of the bridge there, and you're stuck at the first red line there, and if you want to play with a medic SMG, you're just going to get shot at and can't even shoot back at them. So Breakthrough, typically for me, lends itself towards long-range gunplay. However, of course, maps like Underground and Armage can be good for close range. Conquest, as we can now see on Twisted Steel and other general maps when changing to Conquest from Breakthrough, is going to be way more open, much larger. Enemies can come from all different types of directions, and again here on Twisted Steel you're kind of going to want to go for long range unless you're going to stay on the bridge, in which case medium range might be possible. But generally Twisted Steel only long range, and again play area and play size is different with different game modes. And lastly, we can compare this with smaller game modes such as Team Deathmatch, Squad Conquest, Domination. Team Deathmatch being on screen here, where again the play area is much smaller for Team Deathmatch. On Twisted Steel it is still a very open area which is suited to long range, but again think about the map you're playing on, how big the sector or area is, and therefore how you might be able to get around that sector and what range or class or gun you should be using for it. Next, we have sectors and areas, and this builds upon the previous point very slightly. It is a very similar point, but it is worth going through this example and looking at it on a sector by sector basis. So using Arras, you can see here with the first sector, it's complete open fields, so very wide, very open, and generally here you're going to be wanting to use as longer range weapons as you possibly can. As we move through into the next sector, we can see that it's still pretty wide, however it's much more densely populated with buildings and therefore close range, medium range areas. So absolutely every time I play this, I will be changing gun when I go into the second sector. Now unfortunately this game I played to be able to get the final sector screenshot didn't go through to the final sector, but we all know and can see it's again on a very open area at the end with a massive field in between the two flags, which are normally going to be A and D on Conquest. So again, the last sector is going to be very open and wide, so again you might want to change to a long range weapon, such as a sniper or a semi-automatic assault rifle. So look at the different sectors of the game mode you're playing, specifically here Breakthrough, but for this example you're going to have long range, then close to medium range, to then long range again. Next, we have game balance, and this closely links into the first point of the scoreboard because you can check the scoreboard for game balance, as well as just general feel, again, throughout the course of the game in whatever situation you are. As you can see in this example here on Underground, we've been pushed back to the choke point whereby we're stuck at the top of the stairs looking down towards B flag. We can't get through, the enemies can't get through, and it's just, a stalemate at these staircases. As a result, I've changed to using a high magazine capacity weapon, which is good at medium to long range, so I can look out of these windows, out towards B flag, and pick off any of the enemies that are coming from B flag. Yes, you can use a close range aggressive medic SMG, jump out these windows, use smokes, and try and push out, but in my experience, you will die over and over and over again. You'll get sniped from across the map there, and there's loads of enemies that are going to be directly underneath you, shotguns, etc. And so it's very hard here to push through. The best thing for me, again, is to go for that medium to long range weapon in these windows. Stay as an active moving player, so you can try and get as many kills as possible while staying alive and not getting shot, especially by those snipers. And the more enemies you kill and take out, then the better the chance is that your team has an opportunity to push back through to the center of the map. But generally, the overall point to this is, have a look at the game balance. Where is the majority of play going on at this specific point in this game? Is it worth, even just for one life, changing gun to be able to have a better life in that sector of the map? Next time you die, you can change back to what you want to carry on using. Next, we have spawn beacons. You can see here, when you choose the combat role, this gives you not only the opportunity anymore to spawn on your squad's beacons, but also to be able to spawn on your teammates' beacons, no matter where they've placed them in the map. Now, you might hate and not be a fan of playing in the scout class, but as you can see in the example here, we're about to get spawn trapped. It provides a massive opportunity for you to spawn away from that spawn trap, behind enemy lines to potentially get a good flank, and to be able to run off and go and capture different flags. Yes, of course, you have to change to the scout class, but if you change to the scout class and place down your own spawn beacon, then as soon as you die, you can just respawn on your beacon in that good position with whatever class you want. So it's just a temporary one life change. And as you can see here on Underground, getting pushed into a choke point between A and B, there's a spawn beacon there from a teammate which I can spawn on. Absolutely, I'm going to spawn on there. You can spawn, as you can see, I've got equipped with a trench carbine, so you can go with one of the more aggressive guns in the scout class, just temporarily, and it can offer you a massive get out of jail card to keep the game going longer, and something where you can go on a massive rampage of kills and balance out the game. And lastly, we have your mood. Now, this is closely linked to what you would probably do when you're trying to warm up, when you first boot up Battlefield and you want to get back into it. So a lot of the aggressive, ZK players are going to want to play aggressively, run around, run and gun, and effectively improve very fast their reaction time by going into gunfight after gunfight after gunfight with multiple enemies, even if it means them dying over and over and over again. This is in a complete contrast to myself, who when warming up wants to play slower, use weapons which are well-rounded, perhaps low recoil, an average rate of fire, such as the Ribeirols, which you can see on screen, or possibly even the Sten from the medic class. And I want to play slow. I want to just practice on aiming in, shooting at enemies, controlling recoil, and obviously just letting my brain sort of get used to thinking about what I'm doing, where I'm going, rather than just rushing in, running and gunning, and perhaps getting killed over and over again. So the point about your mood links into this, in that if you do rush in and get killed over and over and over again while trying and wanting to play aggressively, then of course you might find your mood turns very bad. Your brain and what you think and what you want to do just doesn't work anymore because you're getting frustrated and you're just constantly running into gunfights and dying. In that case, my suggestion is to change to these sorts of weapons which are better suited for long range or a slower style of play temporarily, while obviously, of course, you can get warmed back up into the game and then go back to playing aggressive. Thanks for watching.